Hey, thank you, Adam. I really appreciate it. So you can see me, you can hear me, and you can see the slides, right?
All good. Thank you.
Perfect. All right. So let's go ahead and begin. I'd like to welcome everybody here. There's something I really want to share with you. I'm super excited about this presentation. It is, like Adam mentioned, this is 20 years in the making. I'd like to share with you some thoughts about being very purposeful in crafting a corporate culture for fun as well as for profit. These are tips, and the tips that I'm about to share with you, I've learned over many years, and I'm hoping they'll help you for those of you who happen to be leaders in your organization, or even if you're not a leader in your organization yet, you can still apply the ideas that I'd like to share with you in building your organization and just making it a better place to work. So I'd like to tell you where I learned the stuff I'm about to share, to give credit where credit is due. I got out of college back in 1991, and I started working for a company called Bell Communications Research. We called it Bellcore for short. For those of you who are of a certain age, you might remember the Bell system, right? This is the thing that ran the phones in the United States, the phone company. And when they split up AT&T back in the day, in the 1980s, they actually took part of Bell Labs and gave it to the regional Bell operating companies. So Bell Labs proper stayed with the long distance company, but enough of it was needed to keep the phone network running. So they gave that to the local phone companies. And that was Bellcore. Bellcore was the part of Bell Labs that went with the local phone companies. I got out of college and I got a job there. And I have to tell you, it was a time of my life. I really enjoyed it. Um, my coworkers were amazing. They were so brilliant, so smart, so quirky, so weird. It was every day going into work was like just going into this adventure. It was almost stereotypical of like this sort of laboratory environment where people were playing with things and juggling and had like molecular structures on their desk and were trying to invent something new. It was just a marvelous place to be. And I learned a lot, even without knowing that I did, about culture. And I got to tell you, in the companies that I've helped to form and create over the last 10 years or so, I've really tried to capture some of that lightning in a bottle that was the Bellcore corporate culture. In some ways, maybe this is going to sound kind of sad, but in some ways, I'm trying to build an environment for my team now that recaptures the magic that I had early in my career. So that was Bellcore. I worked there until 1997. Then I actually moved on. I moved to another company called SAIC. And in SAIC, I started working for other companies besides the phone company. I started working for various government agencies because it was a big government contractor, but also a lot of the commercial banks up in New York City. And that gave me some experience outside of this narrow field of telephony, kind of seeing how other kinds of companies. We did work for high-tech companies, in Silicon Valley. And my focus was on incident response and penetration testing. That's what I did at Bellcore and into SAIC. Then at SAIC, we got sold off. Our piece of SAIC got sold off into something called a Global Integrity. And Global Integrity was a great place. That's where I first took over a team. I had a leadership position there. At Global Integrity, I led a team of 25 penetration testers and 5 incident handlers. And it was fun. I learned a lot about leadership. I learned a lot more about corporate culture there. And I started, trying to take the ideas I learned at Bellcore and applied those at Global Integrity. But after a while while things went very well, they really wanted to, my leadership really wanted to use my rapport with the customers, and they gave me a sales job. I was a little hesitant at that at first. I mean, I'd been leading a team of 30 people. They wanted to convert me into sales. I'm happy in retrospect that they did it because it gave me a whole different perspective. First of all, I made a lot more money as a salesperson because I was pretty successful as a salesperson. I did it for 18 months and I was on commission. And so I made more money than I'd made in any point earlier in my career. And I learned a lot about how to deal with customers and the kinds of things customers want. But I got to tell you, I did it only for 18 months because I didn't like one really important aspect of it. And that is, I found my customers, people that I'd known for years and I had done great technical work for, when they knew I was in a sales role, they thought of me as a non-technical person. It never occurred to them that a salesperson could be technical in any way. So they would call me with a problem And instead of trying to sell them a solution, I would tell them how to solve the problem, right? I'm trying to be a good, citizen here and supporter of my customers. And they would say to me several times, "Oh, thanks, Ed. We appreciate that. Can you have your technical people call us back and tell us what the solution to the problem is?" So I'd call the technical person and say, "Hey, can you call this customer and tell them here's what the solution is to their problem?" Because the customer didn't want to hear it from me because they pigeonholed me being in sales. So that only held for about 18 months that I was in sales. Then our company got bought by Predictive Systems. I went back to Predictive Systems, which was a networking company that was trying to branch into cybersecurity. That's why they bought Global Integrity. And there I got a chance at leadership again. So I moved out of sales. I led a team of penetration testers, and I enjoyed that. That was fun and good. But then I was driving to work one morning, and I had become a SANS instructor by that point. So I was teaching SANS classes. My book came out in 2001, the Counterhack book, and I was making some royalties from that book. So I'm driving to work one morning to do some work at Predictive Systems, and I'm just going through in my head the amount of money I'm making on my side jobs versus the amount of money I'm making on my job. In other words, my 1099 income versus my W-2 income. And they were equal. So I was making just as much on my side jobs as I was making on my job. And I didn't turn around and drive home, but it really changed my whole perspective that entire day. I worked at Predictive for another couple of months, and then I moved on. And in 2004, I set up my own company. And I worked at my own company for about a year. And I enjoyed it, but there were two things I didn't like about it. Well, maybe three things. The first thing was I was kind of lonely. I mean, it was just me. I mean, I was doing great work, but I was lonely. The second thing is healthcare costs, because I was buying healthcare for me and my family, and I was a group of one, and it's really expensive to insure a group of one. So I could get lower healthcare costs if I was to aggregate with other people. And the third thing was the kind of work I could get. I'm here to tell you, I was doing work for the Pentagon. It was wonderful work. I loved it. I can't get into the details of what it was, but I was working for the Pentagon doing cool stuff. It was all contract work. And I was doing projects that were 10,000, 15,000, maximum, say 25,000. And this new project came up. It was over 100,000 bucks. I bid on it because it was a great project. I really wanted that. I was super excited. I thought I was the best person for the job. And they said no. They gave it to somebody else. And I asked them why. I asked my customer why. And they said, "You're one guy. If we got to get this project done, if we give this $100,000 gig to you and you die or go crazy or disappear, we still got to get the work done." So based on that, I decided to work with several of my friends and form a company called InGuardians. It was originally founded by 6 founders, each one with an equal share of the company. So 6 founders. And there I learned a whole lot about corporate culture. I tried to do these experiments, and the rest of the founders did these experiments to try to come up with ideas. How do we motivate our employee base? We started with 6. Very rapidly, we hired a 7th. We got our way up to about 17 or 18 different employees. I enjoyed it. And a lot of what I'm going to share with you here was stuff that we collectively, the 6 founders of InGuardians, kind of came up with to support corporate culture, to kind of boost it, to make sure we had a solid company that was inspiring and motivating of our technical staff. So you can see I'm going through this in this level of detail because I'm showing you all these ideas kind of folded forward over the space of a couple of decades. Now, I love InGuardians. I still support them. But back starting in 2010, I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I formed a separate company, still doing my work at InGuardians. But in 2010, I created a company called Counterhack. And Counterhack was designed to create cyber ranges for the SANS Institute, doing things like the Holiday Hack Challenge and so forth. And I continued on with InGuardians for another year or so, but in 2011, I left InGuardians. Still love those guys. I still support them by sending work their way and such. But from 2010 till now, I've been working as the sole proprietor at Counterhack. And Counterhack, we're 10 people. And I'm taking all the lessons that I've learned from InGuardians and from Belcore and Global Integrity, and I'm fusing them together in this company called Counterhack. So what I'd like to do is to share some tips and ideas that I've shamelessly stolen from, I've learned and applied and adapted from these other great experiences. And I'm so thankful to the people, the leadership of Belcore, SAIC, Global Integrity, Predictive Systems, my partners over at InGuardians, and my employees at Counterhack who are the wonderful guinea pigs. Some of them are sitting 15 feet over that way in that room listening to me speak right now. So thank you for being guinea pigs. Much appreciated. All right. So far, no guinea pigs were hurt in the testing process applied here. All right. By the way, I hope you can recognize what the background of this is. Those are Petri dishes, the background of my slide, because we're talking about how to instill culture. All right. So the theme, if you've been at these talks this week, you've heard the theme. The theme of Retreat 2020 is to develop cybersecurity professionals of character. And how do we define that? Technical skill. That's great. You can find a lot of people with technical skill that don't have character. So it doesn't stop with technical skill. They can do critical thinking. They have grit. And grit is defined as perseverance and integrity to achieve an important and hard goal. I looked that up for this talk. All right. So that's what grit is. Discipline, curiosity, and collaboration. This is what I think about when pulling people together in my team, the kind of people that we want. But you can't just hire somebody with that and then not continue, not have a plan for helping to keep that curiosity, that critical thinking, that grit, the collaboration. You need to be purposeful in this. And you do that by forming a deliberate corporate culture. So then I decided I'm going to look up what organizational culture is. And according to businessdictionary.com, listen to this carefully, organizational culture encompasses values and behaviors. Values, that's an important thing. Dr. Maurer, when he kicked off Retreat 2020, talked about the importance of values in cybersecurity professionals. Yep, and how organizations who are trying to hire cybersecurity professionals want to make sure they're hiring people with values. So corporate culture, organizational culture encompasses values and behaviors that contribute to the unique social and psychological environment of a business. So what I'm going to share with you here is a bunch of tips for how to try to be deliberate and do this. Now, the ideas that I'm going to share with you can apply to a whole big company. Belcor, when I was there, had 8,000 people in it. Or it could apply to a single small team. Remember I told you my team when I was at Global Integrity had 30 people in it? And my team at InGuardians, we were 17. Now I'm at Counterhack, we have 10. So these ideas can apply across different sizes and scales of organizations. And also, the ideas that I'm about to share with you can apply to leaders. I mean, a lot of this is thought for leaders and I hope advice and inspiration for leaders, but also followers. People who are parts of a team can also implement some of the ideas I'm about to discuss. Also, I know many of you are students, and what I want to share with you is a glimpse of my learning of what makes companies tick and successful over the last 20 years with the idea that, I mean, many of you are Montreat students. So you are the future leaders. You might find 5 years from now, you'll graduate from Montreat, you'll get a job, you'll work there for a couple years and such, and then you get a promotion, and maybe you'll have a team of 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. And 5 or 8 or 10 years from now, I'm hoping that you'll remember at least one of the 10 or so tips I'm going to share with you so that you can apply that to make your organization have a more positive culture. So you might want to take some notes on this, because for some of you, I hope you can just use this right away. Others, you might already say, hey, I'm already doing that. And I'm hoping to reinforce what you're doing. And then some of you, it might be something that you could use 5 years down the road in your career. It might be something that took me 15 years to learn. So I want to share this with you now. Okay. All right. So we'll start out with the importance of an organization's culture. Let me tell you a true story that happened about 3 months ago. I started thinking about business culture and corporate culture and what makes an organization tick and a good place to work. I was thinking about this with respect to Counterhack and also all the different places I had worked at before. And I was actually not writing this presentation. I was actually writing a presentation for the Counterhack team talking about corporate culture. And so I went out to dinner with my son. He's 19 years old, very smart kid. And I remember we were seated outside, because COVID world and all that. So they were essentially sitting under a tent in New Jersey. He ordered a pizza. I ordered a steak. And I asked him what he's been thinking about and working on. And he asked me what I was thinking about. And I said, I've been thinking about corporate culture. And he kind of sniffed a little bit and said, there's no such thing, Dad. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no such thing as corporate culture? He said, that's just a myth. That's what companies tell themselves that they have, but it's not real. And I said, oh, it's very real. And I said, well, where have you worked? Of course, I knew the answer, but where have you worked? And he said, well, I worked at Rite Aid and it sucked. No offense to Rite Aid, but his personality is not the kind of guy that likes to sit there and ring people up. I mean, and that's what he did for a whole summer. And he's worked at DoorDash. Again, no offense at DoorDash, but he doesn't have a lot of interaction with other people other than the restaurants where he goes to pick the stuff up and where he goes to drop it off. And he likes the DoorDash work because it pays well for him. But he got the idea from Rite Aid and DoorDash that there's no such thing as corporate culture. And I said, that's because you really weren't involved in their corporate culture, and their corporate culture didn't reach out to embrace you. Corporate culture is not necessarily a positive thing. It can be a very negative thing as well. You want to, and again, I'm not trying to attack Rite Aid or DoorDash, although I do think there are things that they could do to culturally embrace folks like this 19-year-old kid that were working there, okay? But corporate culture in a positive fashion has so many benefits. One of the fundamentals for me is it makes the work more enjoyable. If it only did that, I'd still be for it. I mean, life is meant to be lived joyfully. It's meant to be savored. That doesn't mean it's always easy, but it is something that is a gift. And making that gift more enjoyable is certainly a good thing. Another big thing, it helps with employee retention. This is huge, especially in cybersecurity. Right now in cybersecurity, employee retention is the number one thing that employers are trying to figure out. I had a friend who years ago, this is before we even gotten into how things are really bad now. It's hard to retain employees. It's hard to find new good employees. 10 years ago, he said this to me. He said, cybersecurity is like this. It's like all these companies have their cars and the cybersecurity professionals are hubcaps. And all of us have 3 hubcaps. And what we're trying to do is to steal the hubcaps from the other people's cars. So now I've got 4. Of course, you've got 2. So what are you going to do? You're going to steal 2 more from somebody else and so forth. And we're just trading hubcaps. Now, the truth is, we need to work to make more hubcaps. Montreat is working very hard at that, right? And I guess you and I and my team here, we're all hubcaps according to this analogy. We got to make more hubcaps. That's certainly true. But once you get your collection of hubcaps, you want to make sure you keep them and people can't steal them. That's retention, and it's super important. And in fact, there's a, if you go over to this bdcnetwork.com, they have a write-up there. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but it's the return on investment of company culture. And what is the big payoff from having a good, positive culture? And a lower turnover rate is a huge element there. 14% lower turnover rate. Or if you have a bad culture, or if you ignore your cultural experience, a 48% higher turnover rate. That's pretty bad, right? And that actually translates not only into the turnover rate, but also to the attention they give to customers. There's a direct mapping, this article describes it, a direct mapping between positive view of corporate culture and engagement with customers. It'll also help you attract high quality new candidates. If the people that you have that are working in the organization are happy because of a positive culture, it'll help you get new people that are excited and helping and want to contribute to that culture. Also, it will, I believe strongly, make the company more profitable. There are some indications of that because of this higher engagement rate with customers, 30%. Customers more willing to spend more money with you more often if they have a positive experience because your employees are delivering that because of the positive corporate culture. And I think the bottom line as a company owner here is it makes the company more valuable, right? More valuable not only for the owner, but also for all of the employees. So I urge anyone in leadership to be very deliberate in crafting a healthy, positive organizational culture. I explained this all to my son while I was having a steak and he was having pizza. I think I convinced him at the end. I'm not sure, but I'm sure someday he'll come around. All right, so there you go, the importance of a corporate culture. All right, but we're here talking about this in the context of cybersecurity. So I wanted to think about what is special or different about cybersecurity personnel. We tend to be problem solvers. I'm focused here on technical. Remember the definition that we're working with here for the Retreat 2020 conference is people who are technically skilled. So I'm focused on technical people. We tend to be problem solvers. Whether you're, say, doing cyber defense, the problem you're trying to solve is how can I make multiple layers of a defensive technology infrastructure. So if the bad guy breaks in through any one of them, I still have multiple layers, belt and suspenders. I'm trying to solve the problem by having belt and suspenders. Or if you're in digital forensics, right? The problem you're trying to solve is, what did the attacker do? What is the case? What is the flow that the attacker used to exploit this organization? And how can I recreate that and understand it? And apprehend the attacker and make sure he pays for his crimes. Or if you're a pen tester, your job is to figure out, how can I solve the puzzle of how to find your vulnerabilities and exploit them into your organization. All right, so we tend to be problem solvers. Also, many, but not all of our peers tend to like puzzles. This is a very common thing in cybersecurity space. We tend to like to solve puzzles of various kinds. Maybe they're, online puzzles. Maybe I have puzzles all around me in the office. Maybe they're ciphers, crossword puzzles. One of my team members, Ron Bose, he's the guy who wants me to mention him in every presentation I do. So here you go. This is for Ron. Ron Bose is an avid crossword puzzle person. So they tend to like puzzles. They also tend to like quirkiness, right? I mean, I think you've seen a little bit of that sort of fun quirkiness in association with Retreat 2020, like the videos that we start the sessions off with and things like that. I know Adam, who's our host for this, really has a certain quirkiness of his personality as well. And some of this, I think, is due to the relationship to hacker culture. I mean, hacker culture is very puzzle-based, very quirky. And this especially applies in the penetration testing field, which is sort of my subfield of cybersecurity. Now, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. These characteristics of being problem solvers, liking puzzles, being quirky, they're not universal among technical people in cybersecurity, but there's a distinct leaning in that direction. So how do we engage such people? There's a big problem in the cybersecurity space, and that is for technical people and even non-technical cybersecurity people, the issue of work burnout or job burnout. Technical cybersecurity work is incredibly demanding. I'm here to tell you, and I'm not trying to scare you off for those of you that are Montreat students or students at other institutions, but the work we do is demanding. It's hard. Sometimes it's intellectually hard. Sometimes it's frustrating. You're doing a pen test and you're trying to hack into that system and it just isn't succumbing to everything that you throw at it. Or, you're trying to defend against an attack and the attacker finds some way into your organization, or you're doing a forensics case and it's just not working out. You can't put the pieces together. Job burnout is a real issue. So instilling fun and playfulness, maybe even to the point of zaniness, can actually help diffuse the burnout. You also need to be very conscious about people taking their vacations, getting time off, things like comp time. That needs to kind of be baked in. I don't have any slides on that, but that needs to be baked in. I really do try to push my people to take, whatever you get, a week's vacation, 2 weeks vacation, 3 weeks vacation. I want you to actually take that vacation. If that vacation starts accruing year over year over year, that's not a good thing. You need to recharge your batteries. Or if somebody asks for a day off, I pretty much give it to them. If it got out of hand, I might put an interruption there, but the people tend to be so driven, especially if you give them fun and zaniness and playfulness. So I have a couple of photos here of some folks from my team and some of the things that we did. So one of the things that we are honored to have every year is the US military sends us someone to work with us for that year. The US Army did this for us for 3 years in a row. The US Air Force is doing this for us now. The Army calls it training with industry. The Air Force calls it education with industry. And a few years ago, we had somebody that came in from the Army. His name was Tad Bennett. You can see him here in the center wearing the NetWars shirt of the photo there. And, this is a US Army guy. And he was required by the Army to shave when he was working at the Army. But they gave him to us for a year to do knowledge transfer. So we can learn better how to support the Army, and the soldier can learn better learn from private sector how to do things. But one of Tad's things was he was never going to shave while he was here because he didn't have to. The entire rest of his career, he had to shave, but not here. So he grew his beard out for a year. And on his last day on the job, I went and bought beards for the entire team so we could all look like Tad. And here you can see the whole team wearing our big old beards. Silly, fun, but it shows that we're a team and we're working together. Or let me give you another example. We did a field trip where we went to a mall And as we were walking through the mall, they had one of these places where you can go and you can rent, I think it was for like $8 or something, this giant stuffed animal that has a little motor in it, and you can sit on it and ride it around. And I think I had 10 people from my team there. And I went up to the lady, I'm like, how much is this? And she said, it's $8 for 45 minutes or something. I said, you got 10 of these things? And several of the people on my team are like, no, you're not going to do this. And I'm like, oh, yes, we are. So we had such a wonderful time riding around on these silly little things around the mall. I encourage you to do this and to just think outside the box and have some fun. But I want to make it more directed now and give you specific tips on things that I found that really work well in building this culture. First, you need to inspire and consistently communicate the big picture. Now, those words, the title of the slide, they might sound kind of airy and such, but let me get practical in how you do this. Think about what makes your organization unique. What do you do? Does your organization accomplish? Maybe it's just 10 people, maybe it's 8,000 people. What do you do that no one else does and no one else can do? And then think about your team and what your team accomplishes that they can only accomplish as a team. That is, no individual could possibly accomplish those things. So what is unique to your organization, and what does your team accomplish as a team? And then the final slice I'm going to put in there is, how does your organization make the world a better place? Every organization that is successful, I believe, thinks it's making the world a better place. We could argue whether it actually is, but they look for ways they're making the world a better place. I spend a lot of time thinking about these 3 questions and then trying to communicate them with my team. This third bullet here, how does your organization make the world a better place, I think is especially important for younger people, millennials and Gen Z folks. They want to not only have a vocation that is a job, they also want to have a cause. And if their job is helping them make the world a better place, it makes the whole thing more meaningful and important to them. Older people from my generation and such, I mean, we like that, but the younger generation seems to really be driven by that. And I respect that. I think that's pretty cool. So I'm constantly looking for the answers to these 3 questions and then embedding them in my outreach to my team, both in messaging, but also the activities that we do. So it's not just words. It's not just, hey, here's how you communicate it by saying things, but you also need to communicate it by doing things, what you do. What do you do for the community? What do you do to make the world a better place? I mean, I talk with a lot of different organizations. And if you look at say Walmart, Walmart believes they are making the world a better place by delivering high value goods at very reasonable prices to neighborhoods that maybe otherwise couldn't afford such high value goods. Or if you look at Amazon, Amazon is the fulfillment center for global distribution. And if you look at what those 2 organizations have done, Amazon and Walmart, although they compete tremendously, in COVID, they're a lot of what's kind of kept things going. And they know that and are communicating that to their folks. And that is a really important and big responsibility they have. And then if you look at smaller organizations, each of them has to think about how they're making the world a better place and instill that in their employees to reinforce that. That's the big picture, really important. So communication, here's what I do with my team. We have weekly status meetings. We've done this since the very start. But I tell you, I don't know if I should mention this, but I will. When I was at SAIC, we had weekly status meetings. But I got to tell you, those weekly status meetings, most of them were everybody, including me, telling the boss all the great stuff we were working on. They were designed to impress the boss. At Counterhack, we have our weekly status meetings. In fact, we had one just before this call started. I tell people the purpose of the status meeting is so we can share status of stuff that impacts other people on the team. But the whole purpose of this meeting is not to impress the boss. Not at all. We don't want to do that. The boss knows what you're up to. That's fine. If you want to impress the boss, call them separate. We'll talk. But this is about talking to your coworkers about stuff that you're doing that impacts them. So it's a profound rule of our weekly status meetings. And then I started doing something that I should have been doing beforehand. We did the weekly status meetings for the first, 9+ years of Counterhack. We used to do them back at In Guardians as well. But when COVID first hit and April 1st, businesses were closing up. It was kind of a concern. What's going to happen? Are we going to have enough work to keep our company going? I realized I needed to communicate better and more effectively and more regularly with my team. So we started to do a state of the company meeting. And the first one we did was April 1st or 2nd, I think. And I did it every 2 weeks until about July. And then at July, it kind of felt like, hey, we can see what this COVID world's going to look like. So I started doing it once per month. I try to make them fun. I try to make them a little silly. So I call them the State of the Onion. And I put a cute little onion on the cover slide. Here's a couple of slides from the State of the Onion. And so you got my cover slide. The last one I did was October 19th. And they usually start with some sort of business reflections. And I was just thinking, recently about key performance indicators and how do we value what we do as a company. Obviously, we want to have our company be healthy so we can continue to exist and support our employee base and our customers. And then, we measure ourselves based on community impact. How are we helping people develop their cybersecurity skills through things like Holiday Hack Challenge and Net Wars and more? So weekly status meetings, yes. And then sort of a monthly big picture meeting. The State of the Onion is what we call it. But I want to show you the structure of the State of the Onion. I got to tell you, it's a little bit formulaic, but that said, it seems to work. I start out with some business philosophy. What makes our organization tick? What are our KPIs? Or what is the value of our corporate culture? Or what differentiates us? In fact, see one of the slides here I have. This was from one a couple months ago, a State of the Onion. 10 years in, the importance of a company's culture, right? And then on the left-hand side, I have various elements of what I consider our culture. And on the right-hand side, I have, well, how does that manifest itself in what we do? So I start out with some business philosophy. I then update the team on new business. Here's the stuff that we're landing. I talk about progress on existing projects from a high level. Again, I'm not trying to replicate our weekly status meetings here. I summarize our financial status so that those folks know they're going to get paid not only this month, but next month and 6 months down the road. I talk about new activities and development. I then have some closing business thoughts emphasizing the team itself. And then sometimes, not always, I'll finish with, oh, and one more thing. I stole that from Steve Jobs. And what I'll always put is I'll do, oh, and one more, and then I'll have some representation of thing. First time I did this, it was, oh, and one more. And then I had thing one from Dr. Seuss's Cat in the Hat. And then I had another one, oh, and one more. And I had that rock person from the Fantastic Four, right, in the comic strip. So one more thing. Here you can see I did a Halloween related one more thing from the Addams Family. And then the one more thing is usually some sort of surprise, some bonus, maybe financially we're doing well, so we gave a bonus to the team, or maybe we got some new swag made up for the team, like we had some new polo shirts designed for them. So that's the one more thing. Next, other little tips for you. Easter eggs in your communications. Did you see the Easter egg on the previous slide? I don't know. I mean, let's see if I can pull up the chat here. I don't know how can I get the chat? Did anybody see it? Oh, let me see. How can I view the chat? Or maybe you could type it in as one of your questions. Oh, by the way,
chat.
What's that?
Nothing in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Did anybody see the Easter egg on the previous slide? Did you see it, Adam?
I'm not sure what you referred to as an Easter egg, so I probably did
just a fun little thing. Let's see. I think I can see how to bring the chat up here more. How do I bring up chat? Yep, there's chat. Cool. All right, excellent. So I'm talking about this. You see the Easter egg now. In fact, when I was going through this presentation with my team a couple months ago, one of the guys on my team said, why did you make some blue and some green? Oh, I see it. The company's called Counterhack, so it's CH. That's it, okay? This is not terribly sophisticated Easter eggs. But I do try in my corporate communications to selectively put little Easter eggs in to get people's attention and to make it kind of fun, right? So you got to make them pretty easy. Don't put giant complex ciphers and such, and limit them to specific kinds of communication, because you don't want to tie up your staff's time with trying to dig Easter eggs out of everything you send to them. But, in the State of the Onion presentation, I'll put in some Easter eggs, and it can help some people to pay attention, but it can also distract others. Okay. Next, brown bag lunches. You'll notice that when Adam originally kicked off the whole Retreat 2020 conference, he billed that initial the initial State of the Union presentation. He called it a brown bag lunch, right? And this is one of my favorite memories from Belcourt, just sitting down with amazingly brilliant people. We do them once a month at Belcourt and have somebody just present on some of the work that they're doing that is of interest to everyone. And when doing these brown bag lunches, the leader and also some people on the team, you need to fully engage. You need to be there and really celebrate the work this person is doing and sharing, and also seeing how it impacts your thought patterns and your work. And I love doing these with my team. Now, Belcourt, we did them monthly. At Counterhack, we do them twice a year. But we don't just do like one little brown bag lunch. We'll do it over the space of our yearly get-together. So there's usually 2 or 3 of them, maybe even 4. A couple times a year, but they're so much fun. Here you can see Ron Bose, who always wants to get mentioned in my talk. Here he is doing a brown bag lunch with the whole team gathered around. Next thing we do is the payroll envelope game. When I first started Counterhack, what I would do is, we in the mail, we'd get their paycheck stubs and we'd send them to them. And I put a custom middle name for each of the employees, so it'd be, Fred something custom followed by Smith, or Jane something custom followed by Smith, or Tim frickin' Medine. I think that's one that I did. But as the company grew, I started making middle names for all the different people in the payroll envelopes that we would send to them. And then as the company grew even more, I put a theme. So everybody would have a theme for their middle name. Everybody have a different middle name, but it'd all be in a certain theme. And then we turned that into a game where I would show them the envelopes, and they would have to guess the theme that all their middle names had in common. And some of the themes I had: components of human blood. That's a little weird. Ingredients of Coke Zero. So everybody had a middle name of a different ingredient in Coke Zero. And I would just show them one by one, and they'd have to figure out, what do these things have in common? Or components of the Voyager spacecraft, or types of clouds, or, I did all kinds of these. Some of them were super successful. People loved them. I do things like transcendental numbers. Some of them I miscalculated. I did one that was Byzantine cathedrals. I thought that was brilliant. My whole team had no idea, okay? But to give you a sense of what this is like, I'd like to play the payroll envelope game with you. So get ready to type in the chat, okay? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how this thing works. And I do this maybe every 3 or 4 weeks with my team. So here we go. And I just display something on the screen so you get to see the first one. Evan Neil Armstrong Booth. So you think, it must be astronauts, right? Or people born in Ohio. Yep, Adam's playing. You guys can play too. Type into the thing. Let's see when you can get it. So Adam, it's not astronauts, but that's a good guess, good try. Apollo program, stuff associated with Apollo program. Yeah, that might be it. Ron Delaware Bose. Oh, Jim Kelly suggested senators, not bad. Ron Delaware Bose. Delaware? Patrick Hydrogen Chapman. And I'm trying to get my team to think in different ways here, right? Chris December 21st Davis. Chris, Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you, LG. Any thoughts on this? Tom Kitty Hawk Flight Hessman. Based on first name? No. Firsts. Yep, Adam nailed it. It's firsts. Tom A. Listens, the first letter of the alphabet. Daniel, January 1st, Pendolino, first day of the year. Lynn, Charles Lindbergh Schifano, happens to be the first person to fly across the Atlantic solo. And Josh Altair, 8800 Wright, the first PC. So Neil Armstrong, first person to step foot on the moon. First state is Delaware. The first element is hydrogen. December 21st is first day of winter. Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you. That was the first thing that was said on, let's see, Watson was the telephone. Kitty Hawk Flight was the first flight, of course, and A is the first letter of the alphabet. So here you go, first. So I try to get them to think in different ways. Next, one of the things that I do every year for my team is an end of year message. And I swipe this idea from the CEO of Predictive Systems, where I worked for a couple of years. The guy's name was Robert Below. And one of the things that he would do is on December 31st, he would send an email to the entire staff. It was like 500 people at the company at the time. And he would send an email just summarizing with reflections on what the company had achieved that year and some musings about the following year. And I thought, that's a really good idea. When I have my own company, I want to do that. And I started doing this, and it would be 2 to 3 pages of notable team accomplishments with just plain text. And I did that for the first 3 or 4 years of Counterhack. But then as Counterhack started growing and we started achieving more, I put photographs in it, and I really wanted to show the team all that they did. Now they're about 24 pages long, and really it's kind of the personality of the team for that year. And my team actually had a book made up for me of all of the year-end messages for all of Counterhack since its inception 10 years ago. And you can see it's lavishly illustrated because, well, honestly, I wrote every word of this book, but they had it all put together. And I just email it to the team. So you can see here's 2013, for example. You can see that on the screen. But it just talks about the different things that we did. But as we progress, it gets more and more colorful. And in the end, not only does your team, I find it super important that people need to reflect of what they've accomplished over the long term. It is incredibly easy to get focused on the short term and to think, I haven't accomplished anything this day or this week. And you might be surprised at how little you accomplish in a day or even in a week, but you will be stunned at how much you accomplish and how much your whole team accomplishes in a year. And that's what I'm trying to put down. Adam says my team had a book made of my arrest warrants. How about that? Well, memories are important to preserve. So this was a birthday present from my team this year, and I'm super thankful for it. But end of year message, and I encourage you to do that for yourself. I write this message usually starting right after Christmas, and I write it for that week between Christmas and New Year's, and it's one of the most fun things that I do. Yep, Adam summarizes it well. We overestimate what we can do in a day, but underestimate what we can do in a year. And the only thing I'd add to that is show me, write what you've done in a year. And I can think of no better time to do that than December 31st. Next, all hands meetings. We call ours Counterhackapalooza. This is something we started doing when I was at InGuardians, but to bring the whole company together periodically, like annually, we do ours twice per year. We do one at a hacker conference and one at the Counterhack Challenges. We call it IHQ. That's the Imperial headquarters, but we don't capitalize the I because it would be pretentious, right? So we're the Imperial headquarters, but it's a lowercase I, so it's okay. Now, you could see on the left-hand side, this is a photograph of us all watching a movie at our Counterhackapalooza last year. But because of COVID this year, our 2 Counterhackapalooza meetings have been virtual. So I did a little video of one of them, and I called it the Counterhack Bunch, just to kind of be fun and quirky. Field trip. Well, while we're doing these Counterhackapaloozas, we usually do them over 3 days. People travel on Monday. We meet Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. People travel back on Friday. But Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, what we really like to do is on that Wednesday to do a field trip somewhere. It can be nice to get a change of scenery. I showed you how we went to that mall once, but we've been to New York City because we live in New Jersey. So New York City. We also went to a garden of sculpture in New Jersey area. And here you can see the whole team at the Garden of Sculpture. Now we do work some when we're doing our field trip. So they come for Counterhackapalooza, fly in Monday. Tuesday we work and they have brown bag lunches and such. Wednesday we do a field trip and work some on that field trip. And then Thursday we're back from the field trip and we work again and everybody goes home Friday. But during the field trip, I have an agenda, and on the agenda, horsing around is a line item. We have specific time set aside to horse around. And I encourage you to do that. Yep. Yes, and Adam suggests that a good Counterhack leader would bring their staff to Montreat for a field trip. We're on it. We're on it. Next, exclusive team swag. Now, here's something I feel really important, really strong about. A lot of the other companies in my space, I won't name them, but we're a small boutique pen testing company, and a lot of them spend a lot of time and a fair amount of money buying swag, stuff with their corporate logos on it, and giving it to the community or customers. And that's great. I'm all for that. But I think they need to spend some of that time and money creating exclusive things just for their teammates, right? So at Counterhack, we have hoodies made up for the team. We give a different Christmas present every year, holiday present to the team. So hoodies, t-shirts, polo shirts. Just a couple weeks ago, we got polo shirts for everybody on the team. We had custom backpacks created. I learned this at InGuardians, to have this sort of custom thing done. And then, what'll happen is you'll see people from the community saying, I want one of those shirts. And the answer is, well, you can't have one. Those are only for people who are on the staff here. We have this other shirt for you. Yeah, but I want one of those. And I remember the first time we did this at InGuardians, we had these cool blue shirts with sort of a superhero InGuardians logo on the chest. And I think it was ShmooCon. And 10 of us walked into the back of the room all wearing these shirts. And there was a blogger there. And the blogger actually blogged, when I saw the InGuardians team walk into the room, it was like a blue aura surrounded all of them. And it was so captivating and so compelling and so exciting. And it's like, oh, I want to do this. This was so much fun. You could do fly fishing gear. Exactly, Adam, for the staff down there in North Carolina. Yes. So I've learned this and applied it big time. And you need to be thoughtful about the swag that you buy for the team. There are other boutique firms that do kind of what we do. And what they bought for their employees is face masks. And I understand that because they're trying to show that they care for their employees, and wearing a face mask it helps and improve your safety. And my team, and I am pro masks, please understand that. But my team, they started talking in our Slack channel saying, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we got masks and we put the Counterhack logo on the masks, and that would be awesome. And I saw that and I said, no. We sent them polo shirts instead. And I said, I don't like the symbolism of our logo covering your mouth. Now, look, I have friends, in this industry who've gotten, face masks for their people, and I support that. That's great. But that's just not who we are. I want you folks to wear a mask, but my logo, our team logo will never cover your mouth. So you need to be thoughtful. And we also do holiday presents where I'll buy a holiday present for each person on the team. One year we did mats that they could put outside their office door because most of us work from home. So I did one Counterhack South. Here's Counterhack West. Here's Counterhack North. So we did that one year for just based on the geographies of where each employee lived. One year we got these wonderful Bluetooth speakers, and you can see the whole Counterhack team there represented in their Holiday Hack avatar form and then the Counterhack logo. One year we got hoodies for everybody where we put on their back just a description of what they do for the job. So here you can see Tom Hessman, unparalleled ops and QA authority. Here you've got Daniel Pendolino, Chief Marketing, Sales, DevOps, QA, and Bonus Guru, because he's kind of a jack of all trades, and so forth. And so I get this gift for them every year, and they also chip in for a nice gift for me too, which is very sweet and kind. So they don't have to, but they do. Another thing that we do, trying to instill this corporate culture and just sort of a celebration of each person on the team, is what I call CHC Adversary emails. So I have a list here, and I look at it frequently, but it's each person on my team and their start date with the company. So I can look down and say, oh, this person started 4 years ago, or this person started 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, whatever it is. And on their anniversary or shortly thereafter, I will send an email to the whole team with a celebration of what that person means on our team. And I try to make these emails, the CHC Adversary emails, quirky with a theme. I've done Groundhog Day emails where I just send the email every like 5 minutes for the entire day. Princess Bride, Spinal Tap. I did a Laverne and Shirley one. What can I say? I did Lord of the Rings, or just sometimes special. Yeah, it's just birthday fishing. You're right, Chris. But here, let me show you some of what this says. So here's one for Tom Hessman. Folks, as you all know, June 18th marks another milestone in the history of Counterhack, the CHC Adversary of our very own TKH16. That's Tom Hessman. In his 9 years with Counterhack, Tom Hessman has been absolutely instrumental in the development, operations, and quality assurance of NetWars, Cyber City, CyberQuest, Cyber Aces, Cyber, Made You Look Cyber, and don't forget all the cyber stuff too. So you can get it kind of, these are quirky, but then I really do try to emphasize the contribution to the team. Or here's one for Chris Elgie. Hey team, a few short weeks ago, our timeline crossed a pretty excellent milestone, the second Elgiversary of our very own Chris Elgie, who joined our Merry Counterhack team a couple years ago. In his 2 years at Counterhack, Chris has provided true Elg-stanging and Elg-full work for our team, his leadership and Elg-development of NetWars core tournaments, and go on, like that kind of stuff. And of all the Chris Elgies in the world, ours is the Chris Elgiest. Another tip I have for you is to celebrate big annual things. In your business, there are certainly things that happen on an annualized basis. Maybe it's one big thing, maybe it's 2 or 3, whatever it is. But celebrate them purposefully. Maybe you got some sort of big year-end thing that you do, or maybe there's something that happens in the spring that's really important to you. I mean, who knows? Maybe you work for the IRS and April 15th is a big deal for you folks, right? So think about that. And build excitement for your team, even when it's a lot of work. And maybe if you work for the IRS, it's after April 15th is done, because it's like, we made it, right? Or an election's coming up next week. And then it's going to be interesting when they do all the vote counting. But if you're in a state, electoral committee, once that election is done, celebrate, right? So for us at Counterhack, we have attend a HackerCon, which we try to send the whole company to a HackerCon in spring. We do DEF CON in August. We don't bring the whole company there. It's too expensive, but we'll bring a subset of the company. We do Counterhackapalooza in October. That's where we do an all hands meeting. We do a Hackfest challenge in November. That's for the Sands Hackfest. We do our Holiday Hack Challenge in December. We're working on that now. And then we also do a Networks Tournament of Champions in December. So we kind of build the excitement for these annual things, and it gives us a cadence to the year. And then, of course, the end of the year is the year-end message. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I mean, if you think about all of the items that I've gone through here, they come down to being purposeful, playful, meaningful in embracing your team and trying to make them understand the specialness of the team and each individual on the team, and help them to understand that they're part of that important culture. There really is a form of love and caring and understanding that is part of everything that I've described here. And if you're a leader or if you're a follower, a team member, think about that and think about how you can kind of contribute that to the whole team. You know, it's a very interesting thing. It's been said when you have two humans together, there's actually three personalities there. There's the personality of the first person, there's the personality of the second person, and there's the personality of the couple, the two of them together. And it's the same thing with business. If you have 10 people on your team, there's 11 personalities there. There's the personality of the team itself. Now, I've just spent time telling you about trying to shape the culture, the personality of that team. But the bottom line, honestly, you got to choose the right people for that team. If you choose the wrong people and work as hard as you can to make the right culture, it still might not work out. So fundamentally, you're not actually creating the corporate culture. You're encouraging it. You're trying to inspire it. You're trying to give it tools to represent itself. But fundamentally, that culture is the blend of your people's personality. So you don't create it. You're not entirely responsible for shepherding it, but you need to be purposeful in influencing it and trying to keep it positive, but realize the team itself, the entire team, is part of this corporate culture. So at the end of this, I gave you a bunch of tips for influencing your corporate culture, but ultimately you have to build it from your team members. And here's my team. I'm so proud of every single one of them, and I do love them. So we've got, I think, a few minutes for Q&A. Adam, I don't know if I didn't see any Q&A come in. I don't know if you have any questions or comments, but please feel free to kick in now. There's my Twitter handle. I'm simply @EdSkoudis. I hope you found this interesting and maybe useful, but Adam, take it away.
Oh, Ed, thank you so much. I was going to ask, what's your perspective? It seemed like you had it woven in, especially on your egg chart. Mm-hmm. You had it woven in there, but Daniel Pink talks about the three things that people truly motivate them, and you seem to have woven it into your company. I think he talks about, autonomy, purpose, mm-hmm. and mastery.
Yeah,
mastery, because you guys are very, very good at what you do, but you gave them a purpose. But I'm gathering your leadership style and your culture is one of largely autonomy. Is that? It fair?
Is. I tell my folks, I will not micromanage you. When you join my company, I hope you don't think that you'll be talking to me like every day, because you might talk to me once or twice a week. It's pretty autonomous. I might call you though. I do like this managed by walking around, and in COVID world, you pick up the phone, call somebody. But my folks are all very senior, and they don't need me micromanaging them or scheduling them. So autonomy is a big thing. But of the three things that you just listed, mastery and proficiency, that's how you get in the door. If you don't have that, you're not here. So I really doubled down and focused on the whole purpose, why we're here, what we're trying to achieve, how you give back to the community. And especially remember that issue of how do you make the world a better place. And if you don't know how your organization makes the world a better place, you need to really figure that out, because you're not going to be able to inspire your younger employees to give their all to you. And maybe even yourself. You might be just telling yourself stories, right? The Nazis thought they were making the world a better place, all right? And they weren't. So the reason I bring that up is that you need to think and be right from the heart. How are you really objectively making the world a better place? Don't just tell yourself stories, right?
Yeah, the difference between vision and mission.
That's right. Yep. And I was thinking about putting how do you formulate your vision and how do you formulate your mission. I didn't put that in here because there's so many other materials out on that.
Yeah. The other definition of culture I like is that's the way things really get done.
Yeah.
and you've seen, leaders come into an organization and help change the culture because of the way they got done, especially like there was an executive from the Boeing Corporation of all places, very staid, aerospace company, but he rebranded himself when he went over to take over Ford.
Yeah.
And he changed the culture of the organization ahead of the 2008, 2007 economic collapse. And they were the one automobile company that didn't need to take the government loan and buyout program.
That was huge. That's huge. And also, Gordon Bethune, I don't know if have heard of him. He, so Continental Airlines used to be the worst airline. I mean, I flew it from New Jersey just because it was the hub in Newark, and it was terrible. I'd go on business trips early on in my career. This is 20 some years ago. I'd go on business trips and people would, I'd meet with people and they'd say, "Oh, what airline did you fly in on?" I'd say Continental. And literally they would say, "Oh, I'm sorry." Oh. And it was going out of business. Their planes had like different colors for different planes. This one would be brown. This one would be blue. Gordon Bethune took it over and really flipped the whole company around. And he wrote a book called From Worst to First, and made Continental a great airline. And I love flying it. They since merged with United, of course, but he took the same team with the same planes and the same limited budget, but he flipped that culture and made people proud to be there. It's an older book. It's probably 15 years old, but it's a really good read, From Worst to First by Gordon Bethune.
It is. I had the pleasure of watching a similar thing happen when Bill Anders, the astronaut who took the famous picture of the Earth from the lunar capsule in Apollo 8, when he took over General Dynamics, his cultural shift was one of cost plus to profit and sales and being driven on the metrics. And he transformed the company. I think the stock went from 1858 to 120 with the same number of F-16s getting built every year, the same number of tanks, but he dramatically changed the culture, but he lived it every day. And you watched him go from from an astronaut to the government to General Dynamics and others. By the way, that is a great book. It's called The Rocketman.
Oh, cool.
It is interesting. You talked about World War II. I just finished The Boys in the Boat, which is another must-read book of team going through tough times, coming together, forming their own culture as a team, and winning the 1936 Olympics and rowing against the Germans. Awesome. Hitler was on the stage watching 8 races that day. The first 7 were won by Germans. The Americans won the 8th, the most prestigious one.
Jesse Owens and
Conover and stuff.
That was so good. Awesome.
Ed, thank you for sharing your lessons today. It was really, really a pleasure. It's always
Thank you, Adam. Thanks for all you're doing down there at the Carolina Cyber Center. Thanks for the Retreat 2020 conference. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it unfold.